I cannot believe I am making this video right now. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, the last time I actually filmed was when I was 5 weeks pregnant. I think I made the line progression video. I was so nauseous, and obviously when you're really nauseous, like, the last thing you want to do is talk. But right now, currently at the moment, I'm not feeling as bad, and I really wanted to make this video on what I did differently, or what I did differently my last cycle to get pregnant, and just also kind of explain some of the things that I know that can either interfere with you getting pregnant, or, you know, types of infertility, because there's just so much. And the more I looked into it, and a lot of this information I also got from my doctor, so, you know, of course, just a little disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. Kind of like did my research, and a lot of it, which I highly suggest, look up YouTube videos on IVF. You'll kind of just see like the process of, you know, from how the eggs are produced all the way, you know, what happens to the embryos and their growth stage. You're really surprised once you know, look into like IVF about how much the human reproductive system really does suck. Like, people can get like 20 eggs and only end up with like 3 embryos. So that kind of makes sense why sometimes it can be really hard to get pregnant. I see that I have a lot of new followers at the moment, so I just want to briefly go over the type of infertility that I had, and that was, I was anovulatory. And if you don't know what that means, is I wasn't ovulating on my own. Even though I was anovulatory, I actually had secondary infertility, so my infertility journey is probably 100% different than yours. Again, there's just so much that can go into it that can actually affect why you're not getting pregnant. If I further explain what anovulatory means, just pretty much means that you don't ovulate on your own, whether or not you have PCOS, or in my situation, I had 0 answers. I mean, my blood work was obviously out of whack, but my doctor didn't know why. Like, because I didn't have PCOS, I was 99% sure that I didn't have endometriosis because I had no period. The only way that I could have possibly gotten a period, or all the periods that I did have with all my cycles, was because I was taking actual hormones. And it was confirmed in the month November, after I had my 3 failed IUIs. I took a month off just to see if my body, you know, would have done something, and unfortunately it didn't, and it was really devastating. And my periods, not to mention, were really weird. They were like really light. They weren't even like 2 days long. I couldn't even wear like a real tampon. So, and the most weird part too, I would see that my lining was either, you know, one time I think it was like 11, so it was like pretty thick. So I don't know, that might not make sense to you, but the fact that I didn't have like a normal flow, I don't know, guys. I was all messed up. And then the month December came, and you know, since I had the 3 failed IUIs, we also were paying everything out of pocket. If you're wondering why I wasn't getting an IUI in November and why I didn't get one in December, is because we simply ran out of money. It's thousands of dollars to get fertility treatments unless, you know, you have insurance. And that's the thing, in January is when my insurance would have started. So if I'm kind of making sense, in December I was like, okay, whatever, why not, let me just take the 150 milligrams of Clomid. I'll try and take, you know, I'll test with ovulation tests at home, and I even made a video, biggest positive ever. So I was like really in shock, because I didn't think my body would actually, you know, release an LH surge, because LH is a hormone, and with my body, I was completely lacking my hormones. We did the deed, and it was, if you want to call it, I took Clomid. I took 150 milligrams of Clomid, and we had what is known as timed intercourse, because we knew the window when I was going to ovulate from the ovulation tests. And guys, it actually worked. And that's what's insane. Like, I had 0 expectations that it actually would have worked. In January was when I had You know, I went through a huge process, got new insurance because I was that determined that it wouldn't have worked. And I was either gonna get a laparoscopic surgery or I was going to go ahead with what's called a super ovulation. So I would have been using pure injections to really help me ovulate more eggs, because again, with my past 3 IUIs, I had really low progesterone, which is, I think that's why I wasn't getting pregnant. I still think for whatever reason I just wasn't ovulating properly, but it's just crazy, you know? Sometimes you just never know when it's actually going to be your time. And I did do, I guess, like, what, 2 things differently. One of them, or 3. One of them was, I read It Starts With the Egg book. I took all of the information from there, took all the vitamins and supplements that she said to take, and, you know, like CoQ10, and I took vitamin E for my lining because, you know, my lining was weird in the past. Okay, this is definitely the weirdest one. A girl messaged me on my Instagram and showed me a TikTok. I actually don't have TikTok, so I don't watch it or anything. So she just sent me it, and this girl was talking about how she got sick and she was also trying to get pregnant, and she was taking Mucinex D. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, I was like, what? And then, like, I actually researched it. So what this does, it'll actually create a more healthy environment for your cervical mucus, therefore, in plain sight, help the sperm get to where it needs to go. And what made me really take this is because when you take drugs like Clomid or Letrozole, it can actually cause something that's called hostile cervical mucus, making it too hard for the sperm to get to the egg. So that is actually a reason why we were doing the IUIs. Remember when I was nervous to be on these fertility drugs and I didn't know what was going to happen, but you know, you hear all these crazy stories, you take fertility drugs, you get multiples. Definitely wasn't my case, because my body definitely just didn't want to, you know, release a good egg for whatever good reason. But yeah, anyway. I guess the different thing I used was Mucinex D. I took it, I started cycle day 9 all the way until my positive ovulation test. I think I took it one day after the positive ovulation test, and then after, you know, there was just no more point in continuing to take it. I did notice, alright, really TMI, but I can see there's all women watching this anyway, I did have a big increase in cervical mucus. So guys, it all made sense, and I was like, why not? I'm super desperate. And I don't know if that's the reason why it worked. I don't know if it really just was my time. You know, the more, I really believe the more energy you put towards something, eventually it's just going to happen. Sometimes it really can take longer for other people. Sometimes it can take shorter for other people, and sometimes people can get pregnant and have absolutely no idea that they were even pregnant. Another thing that I did differently in this cycle, because of my situation, I had low progesterone every single cycle, even when I did take the Clomid. I decided to switch from oral progesterone to suppositories. And personally, what the nurse said, she's like, you know, the suppositories are a little bit stronger because the oral medication, number one, you have to swallow it, it goes through your stomach and, you know, through your body and then gets absorbed. Rather, the suppository is going straight next to your cervix, borderline touching your uterus where it actually needs to go. I talked about that in a different video. I mean, yes, they are really gross, and yes, you have to either change your underwear very frequently to get yourself some panty liners and just change it. To me, it's not a big deal. I feel like it's making me feel safer knowing that I have really high progesterone. For example, my progesterone was 6.8, and then when I found out I was pregnant, my progesterone came back at 40 at one blood work and 48 at another one. And I think I was only like 4 weeks pregnant, so you can really see there was a huge difference. Like, that's a really solid, nice progesterone number. And also another thing that I feel like, I don't know, and when you're getting IUIs, This doesn't really speak for people if you're doing it at home, but when you're getting an IUI, you take something called a trigger injection, so it pretty much forces ovulation once the doctor sees you have a dominant enough follicle. And me and my one friend kept talking that what if, you know, they categorized an 18mm or a 19mm follicle to be mature and ready and you can get triggered, but we just kept seeing that it, you know, there's people that had like 20mm, 21, 22, and I'm thinking, what if that's also a reason why I wasn't getting pregnant, and what if that was a reason for my low progesterone? Because you either have low progesterone for poor egg quality or the egg being immature. I don't know. So that's another thing. I didn't take the trigger injection. My body did it completely on its own. So normally I would get triggered on cycle day 13 and like technically get an LH surge from it. And then with my natural cycle, the cycle I got pregnant, it was cycle day 15. So an extra 2 full days, the egg just matured to where it needed to be. So I don't know, guys. It really could have just been my time, but I did do things differently. I took vitamin E. I took CoQ10 for almost 3 months, which is supposed to help your egg quality. And I took the Mucinex D. Also, yes, I took Clomid. That was my 3rd time taking Clomid. And I also took Letrozole one time, again, because I was anovulatory. I had to take the highest doses. And guys, even with those high doses, I've had 3 ultrasounds now. I still only have 1 baby, which, you know, I would have been grateful if there was 2, 3, whatever. I'm just grateful that we are finally having a baby. Hopefully I didn't lose you and you kind of understood, like, I was, you know, going back so much, but hopefully you kind of understand like what I did differently. And, you know, I don't know if it's going to work for you, but I wrote down a bunch of things that I just know from my fertility doctor and the conversations that we've had, and also along with my own research, for a few reasons why, or what pretty much can cause infertility. One of the reasons, which I was talking about, which was happening to me, was being anovulatory. So you cannot get pregnant unless you release an egg. And along with that, if you have too low of progesterone, you can either keep having a miscarriage or you're unable to get pregnant, because progesterone is what creates a nice environment for your uterus. And if it's not, you know, if everything is not perfectly okay, it's just not going to happen. And with that being said, sometimes this is like a thing that I saw in IVF when people do like what's called an ERA. They basically do a mock cycle of, you know, before they do a transfer, and sometimes that's when they can see that sometimes they needed to be on their progesterone for an extra 2 or 3 days. Say if they transferred before that and the progesterone wasn't high enough, the embryo isn't going to stick. The same thing can happen. Low progesterone is a really big issue. If you know you have low progesterone, that could be an issue for you. Another big one is having thinner lining, and I guess I'm really talking more when you're getting infertility treatments. You won't know unless you get an ultrasound if your lining's thin. So basically my doctor said anything below an 8 is considered thin. If your lining is too thin, again, it's going to just disrupt the way the embryo implants, either will cause infertility or miscarriage. Now, again, that's just what I know from my knowledge, so just keep that in mind. If you have an issue with thin lining, I'm not really sure how you fix that other than maybe taking more estrogen, but that's something you would have to talk to your doctor about. If you have poor egg quality, that can also just be a reason why you keep having miscarriages. My doctor said the only way you can really test if you have poor egg quality is if you get an egg retrieval and see that your eggs are, I guess they can test them and check if they're bad. If you get your FSH blood taken, you will see if it's extremely really high, that's also an indicator that you could have poor egg quality also. Now, on the male side, it's just an obvious. If your partner's sperm count is too low or non-existent, that is another reason why you may not be getting pregnant. Another one It will be absolutely impossible if you have a blocked tube. You can get a test called an HSG test. I had that actually done. I see a lot of people on the internet saying that it's super painful. It's not, unless I just have a really high pain tolerance, but it's where they put a catheter up your cervix and they blow saline fluid through your tubes. Obviously, if they don't see the fluid coming back out, then you have a blocked tube, so they can see everything going through, then everything's all good. That also brings me to the fact, if you have endometriosis, sometimes your endometriosis can grow over your ovaries or impact your tubes or impact the way that they work, because that's one thing my doctor kept telling me. He's like, even though we did the HSG and it proved that your tubes are open, if you have endometriosis, it can still interfere if you have adhesions or scars or whatever else. So that's why I was going to get the surgery to check if I had it, but again, I still to this day don't think I ever had it. Thank God I didn't have to get the surgery. If you have endometriosis, that is a big factor why you may not be getting pregnant. Endometriosis doesn't just grow on your reproductive organs, it actually grows all throughout your body. Some people have it extremely severe, others don't, and most people actually have to get the surgery to burn it off. And then I've seen stories where they get pregnant right away after their surgery. So if that's something that you know you have, again, just talk to your doctor about it. It can be a big interference if you have that. And then another popular one would be PCOS. If you have PCOS, pretty much you have a bunch of cysts all over your ovaries, and it just kind of interferes with the way you would ovulate. You could ovulate every like 2 months, every 3 months, so you pretty much don't know when you're ovulating versus someone that knows when they're ovulating, say every month. So you can't get pregnant unless there is an egg there sitting and sperm sitting there. So a lot of people with PCOS, they may just keep missing their chances, but I know letrozole will actually help regulate you when you take it, and it's actually just studies have shown that letrozole is just better for women to take if you have PCOS. And another thing, if you have a thyroid disorder, say if your thyroid's off, it can cause miscarriages, and just, you know, I'm pretty sure it can just, if your thyroid's off, I don't know much about thyroids, but I do know if your thyroid is off, it can cause so many complications all throughout your body. So that is something that was checked with me, and it was fine. And this is one thing that I have wrong with me, and that would be if you have a blood clotting disorder. I have factor 2. I have to take blood thinners every single day throughout this pregnancy, all the way till I give birth, and I also have to take baby aspirin. This blood clotting disorder can either cause a miscarriage, or I could have a heart attack or a stroke. But as long as I'm taking the blood thinners, I'm all okay. But it's just a simple blood test to check to see if you have a blood clotting disorder. Some people, I know my one friend has factor 5, there's factor 2, I don't know, there's probably like so many names out there, but just something to think about if you notice yourself keep having miscarriages, because that's what was happening to me, which having miscarriages over and over and over again is a form of infertility also. And I guess one of the last things would be if you're trying to just conceive your new baby, you don't really have anything wrong with you. Before I tried to conceive my first baby, I had to just Google everything. It's not like you would think, oh, just have sex and you'll get pregnant. Actually, no. Like, if your timing is off and you keep missing your window, you're not going to get pregnant for a very long time. I hope that kind of all made sense. Again, it was just a little list of stuff that I know off the back of my head. I'm sure that there's just way more things out there that there's just so much that can cause infertility, and a lot of it you really have to narrow down what may be wrong with you. Unfortunately, some people have absolutely nothing wrong with them and they still can't get pregnant, and it's a really sad thing that I do see. That is, I feel like, pretty rare. Most of the time your infertility is caused for a reason, and sometimes it just may take you, it can take you a shorter time or a longer time to figure out what your problem really is. Guys, I hope in some way this video helps you. I'm going to do a pregnancy update video after this, and I know personally those type of videos can be really triggering. I know they're triggering for me. Just know, you know, if those type of videos bother you, don't watch them. They bothered me, and I'm still to this day, I know this doesn't really make any sense, but I'm having a lot of guilt, and just, it makes no sense, but I feel really guilty that I'm actually pregnant because I have so many other women following me dealing with loss and infertility still, and it just feels like, oh, well, how come I didn't have to go through infertility longer? I know it doesn't make sense, but I do know, you know, I do keep in mind that there's people watching me wishing that they were pregnant, wishing that they were me, because that was me, and I just can't stress it enough. If you want to get pregnant, don't stop. Just keep going, and I feel like listening to your gut instinct, which I really felt, you know, my issue was the way I was ovulating and my low progesterone. And that one cycle did work for me when I least expected it to. I don't know, guys. My heart is just goes out to everyone that's struggling. Like, I know how hard it is. I have so many people, you know, commenting and asking a bunch of questions. I just feel so bad. It's just so unfair that people have to actually go through this, but again, don't give up. You know what you want in the end. I'm still gonna try my best to post so many videos about infertility, and now I will be posting about my pregnancy also. That's all I have for today, and I really hope in some way that this video helped you out.